don't do a lot of live sessions. I will grade people's work that way. I'll record me talking about their stuff.
Right.
And then I give them upload the video to them. We do have some live sessions like this, and we just use Zoom and record it.
Right.
And then, and then for those who couldn't make it, then they get it. We can't force them to join on a regular basis.
Okay.
Because it's supposed to be online, do it at your own timing. So I can't have a class at a specific time and make you required to be there.
Right.
Because of that. So.
And how Zoom works pretty well for you? Yeah.
It's easy. I don't use the record function on that because the file's too large. I use a ScreenFlow to actually record the screen, but that's because it makes it. Otherwise, you have to use Handbrake and squeeze it so it fits. So
wow.
But it's not live. You can do live, but then you got to do all this crazy stuff with Zoom. Everybody's got Facebook. It's easy.
Right.
This is a much easier way of dealing with it. You know, if you want people to join you, I think in the middle of your conversation.
It's like I was telling Cliff Lenderman and Ron Balicki the other night. What I like about Be Live is this function, right, where I get to push stuff into the stream, as easily as that, right? So if we had somebody else who was gonna join us, we could just seamlessly put them in like that. And and so it's not screen sharing, right? Like Zoom or what have you. So how did you get so technical, Tim?
Well, I've been a graphic designer for 30 years or so. So and all stuff, graphic design is all on the computer anyway, so it's kind of had to be that way.
Right.
Some of the ad agency jobs I had, I was this thing's broken. The guy we hired to do it can't do it. Tim, come fix this thing for us. So I just kind of had to learn how to be a jack of all trades and handle all that stuff. So I look at it as pretty much all that learning stuff in general is going, which is, I know where I guess we started again, right? We're almost ready to start. The thing is, it's about going. There's like some truths of things. I need this thing to happen. How does this work? I'll figure out where the buttons are to make it. I need to have this thing happen.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
You think, and no matter what it is you're learning, then it's easy to pick it up because you just find that one important thing that you have to know and figure out how to make it work.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And when you're doing like Photoshop, which have you played with Photoshop at all? I'm sure everybody has a little bit, right?
Just a little.
Right. So it's really complicated program. And then when it came out, the manual was like this thick.
Right.
And nobody read it because you couldn't absorb it that way. You just would do stuff and go, I needed to do this. How do I do that? And look it up.
Did you ever see the book that was like this big called HTML?
Yeah. And now people just cut and paste code from some other place because there's the code I need. I'm just gonna move it.
Yep. How do you relate that the advance of technology to Jeet Kune Do?
It follows the same process, right? So meaning that technology is inherently getting better and better and better, right? And that's how I think of Jeet Kune Do. It's supposed to evolve and progress and get better and better and better. And that might be the actual techniques get better expression of that technique, or it could be the training method, or it's just how you explain what it is somebody's doing evolves. I mean, you've been teaching at least 30 years or something like that, right? At least, right?
Yeah.
Are you the same teacher you were 30 years ago? Absolutely not, right?
No, not at all.
At least I hope not, because otherwise you just stay the same. You didn't progress, right? You get better, right?
Right.
And it's a lot of times it's a regurgitation instead of any evolution. You should always be trying to, how can I better train my students? How can I better express this underlying concept or principle in what I'm training, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's not you just stagnate. And those are a lot of people that seemingly do the same thing the same way over and over and over again. And then they get to a certain level and they never get any better because they stop evolving. They stop challenging themselves. They stop trying to make things better.
Do you think they're just afraid of certain things? Like I know some people who are afraid that that somebody else is going to be better than they are, and then they're just people who are they're so comfortable in what they have always done right? You know, so for example, so you know, my favorite Canadian JKD senior and I were talking about Richard Bustillo and Mitz Yamashita on a Tuesday or Thursday morning at the IMB, right? In the second, when we had the full IMB, right? The first IMB. So they were in the second, they were like in training room B, and they're working on the stuff that they were getting from the Gracies. So this is the 1980s that we're talking about. Right. And I think that more so than other people in other martial arts systems, JKD people, for the most part, have never been afraid to have their knowledge base challenged. And you and I were taught by people who were constantly working on improving themselves and improving their store of knowledge and passing it on to us.
Right.
You know?
Right. And it's not, I look at it, I think the greatest thing was that I got from Bustillo was, it wasn't just the technique. The technique was irrelevant. It was how to look at what I was doing. Right. Right. And this is kind of, I went down this is and my students hate me because I say it all the time, over and over and over again. And that's that there's two ways to approach any kind of training. You go, there's the technique, and then there's the principle behind what it is you're doing, right? The technique.
Yeah.
It's an expression. The technique is an expression of an underlying truth. How a boxer throws a jab and a Muay Thai guy or a Wing Chun guy, it's a punch, which follows physics. There's an underlying principle.
Right.
All punches follow that formula, and actually all striking does, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you understand the principle, it doesn't matter how you express it, right? Because you can throw any punch because you understand how to make that principle function.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's the opposite. It's a back ass word, right? It's like, oh, I learned this technique and I only do the technique this way. But you forgot the reason why you were throwing that punch is to hurt the guy, because, oh, that's pretty, but you're missing the point, right?
Right.
Or if you're doing a mitt drill and you're not really, it's the same mitt drill you've done literally for decades and you gain nothing from it then. You're going through the motions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to build hand-eye coordination. It's supposed to build, accuracy or depth of penetration on impact and all this kind of stuff. It's supposed to do that. And if it stops doing that and you're just going through the motions, you're no longer challenging yourself. You're no longer growing. You've missed the principle behind the drill in the first place,
right.
Which to build those attributes that you're not building those attributes anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So I've gotten a habit of going, as soon as a drill becomes easy, it's useless. Right? Other than as a warm-up, because you're no longer challenging yourself. If it's uncomfortable, the drill is awkward and it feels weird, that means you're out of your comfort zone and you're going to grow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And since I started practicing kind of everything this way, my student skill level shot up quicker. I mean, rapid improvement. I mean, 3 months and you're like, wow, this guy's how long has he been doing it? And he looks like he's been here for years and it's been here a few months.
Yeah.
Because you're focused on the things that are relevant, the principle of why they're doing something. And if they understand that, then the rest is just kind of smoothing out the details.
Yeah. Hey, can you elaborate on that? What you just said about since you started approaching everything that way?
Well, meaning that I don't like. Let's say we're doing a combo. We all have our combinations, whatever. I know Dan has a whole bunch of specific ones you guys learned, and I learned a bunch from Richard. Mm-hmm. But Richard would always come every time I saw him. Maybe here's another 8 count, or here's a 12 count, and they're completely different all the time. He would just change stuff all the time. This is a better way of doing it. This is this one. We'll do this one. Let's try that one. And really, what it was training us to look at it is saying the combination was irrelevant. It was being able to throw any tool at will. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying I'm going to follow this same pattern of combinations and train them over and over and over and over again, I'm going to say here's one pattern combination. Now here's another one, and here's a different one, and here's a different one. So you never get the same one twice. So when I do my class, here's a combo we did today. You probably won't ever see that again. You'll see something else, because you're working on the underlying principle for every combination, right? Yeah. Which is being able to throw your tools wherever they need them to go.
But in some regards, Tim, that's being lost now, right? And people are in search of what they call the series, you know. So
right.
in this series, here's number one and number two, and everybody's trying to write them down in that specific order. And then apparently they go back to their schools and they teach it in that specific order as well. And that's becoming the material.
Right.
You know, so I would, do you think, my theory is that is a generational thing? The people who have been around, let's say since 2000,
right,
they have a different approach to the approach that you and I had.
Right.
And I think also the art is being transmitted differently as well. We were encouraged to seek after the principle and then create our own stuff out of the principle, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's what do you have any thoughts on that?
I definitely some generational stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily, part of it has to be with our generation who's training them by following a series. They want this codified, essentially, right? You know, new classical mess, essentially, what happens.
Yeah.
Because you got to, I got to have this test, and here's the stuff. So we got to follow this framework of things, so you can, frame the information. YouTube is another one of the reasons why it's bad like that, because you have a YouTube video. Here's my 6-step thing for whatever. Or look at just like a BuzzFeed. Here's your 10 something, that bullet point. Okay, that's called chunking. That's reducing information to make it easily absorbed, right? It's part of educational design, right? So that's actually a good way to accumulate information, right? The problem is it's stagnant. It ends. Here's your 10. Great. Well, there's not 10. There's an infinite number of variables, but I gave you 10. So now you're stuck on 10. You'll never go beyond 10. Which is not what we want. So with some of that is how they're trained, some of it's how they're getting information. And some people just have to think that way. I mean, the people who I think stay with JKD who are actually innovative in what they do, right? And even whether they get recognized for it or not, are the ones who are actually constantly developing the art the way it's supposed to, the way they, at least this way. They're not the ones who are regurgitating whatever. I've seen a lot of, as you know, you watch this is some JKD doing some bad trapping thing on YouTube, and that's what everybody thinks JKD is today.
Yeah.
Like, it's a joke. I mean, you go to MMA forum, like, oh, JKD is horrible. You can't use that in MMA. And it's like, I train fighters that fight MMA all the time. And it's like, it has nothing to do with that. It's principles behind it work. It's not the slappy ad trapping stuff you see on YouTube sometimes. Like, you're almost like, don't post that stuff. It looks horrible. You're making us look bad. Don't. Yeah. You're giving a false, because it's easy to regurgitate this pattern.
Right.
And patterns are never the answer for anything. You never want to have a pattern. We do this thing. Paul McCarthy?
Yeah. Cognitive Calling? Yeah.
Yep. He brought some things to my attention. One of them has to do with cognitive load, being able to basically make your conscious mind freeze up. You can't think about what you're doing, so you have to just do it, kind of thing. That's basically what's happening. You're overloading it. And really that sent me down this rabbit hole with doing double stick pattern drills and stuff like that. Because we know a bunch of them. If I said, hey, Dwight, list me a bunch of them, right? And you go, okay, I got 20, 30, whatever. And I go, I have 6 in an infinite number of variables. That kind of thing. Where it's like, if you look at it differently, so meaning that it's not a pattern, or it's a pattern until you and I are working on this drill, and I was saying we're going to go, we're doing like a broken heaven, or, broken heaven 6, right? Well, we're used to doing it on broken on the 1, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, why can't you break it on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7?
Right.
It doesn't matter. Or what if it's 2, or if it's 3, or what if it's whatever? It doesn't matter. What if it's reverse?
Yeah.
Right? And we're just trying to break that regular heaven 6 pattern. So as soon as you start seeing those variables to practice, now you have almost an infinite number of options. And it's not about options. That double stick stuff is supposed to be expressing principles, right? You're trying to gain aspect of combat by doing those drills in the first place.
Right.
So if I did the same heaven 6 broken on the 1 over and over again, yeah. But why don't you do it on every single one? Do it on, break it on the 2, break it on the 3. 2 is a hard one because it's backwards. It's you should try it. It's really funny. But we do some of the cognitive quality. Where I got this is that we call them brain breakers. So as soon as you and I would be working on a drill, and we'll say we get it going. So we got it. We just did it 4 or 5 times perfectly. We start doing it. We start getting to 85, 95% percentile where this drill is smooth. We're done with the drill, change the pattern. Do something else, do a different pattern. And at first, every new pattern is a struggle to get it right? Yeah. Especially when they get really complicated.
Yeah.
And then you do that for about an hour. And now you're on pattern number 37 in an hour. And suddenly you can learn a new one like this. It's like random stuff that you've never seen before. And instantly you're right. Your body says, okay, I'll do this thing. So we're breaking that habit, right? That's why you do a drill new and you're like, I don't know this pattern. And then you'll make a mistake. Oh, I keep trying to do this thing. I keep trying to do that instead of what I'm asking.
Yeah.
That breaks that pattern, which makes you now respond naturally rather than repetitively.
Let me devil's advocate on you here, right? So somebody will hear us discussing that and they'll go, okay, but he's talking about adding on. He's talking about the daily increase and not the daily decrease.
And we're doing the opposite because none of those patterns matter. None of them. Irrelevant. It's one thing we're training for. Every one of those patterns trains the same thing. And that's all we're training. That's what it is like doing the combination. I'm not giving them 80 combinations I want them to write down.
Right.
No. I'm giving you all these different tools and showing you different ways to apply the tools. That's it. I don't want you to write all that. It's irrelevant, right? So really it's the opposite.
Right.
So we think of this, and this is the people think adding on thing. So if you say everybody agrees, every martial artist, okay, you gotta have these strong foundation, right? Okay, you got a strong foundation to do all the advanced techniques, right? And those foundations usually think, oh, I got this wide base of things like a pyramid. Everybody thinks a pyramid. I get in the screens, my fingers pyramid, right? And get more of the foundational stuff at the bottom that supports everything else, and the advanced techniques are at the top. But in reality, it's the other way around. It's an inverted pyramid.
Yeah.
And there's just a handful of things at the very bottom that if you get these things correct, it affects every single thing you do after that, right? It's like learning how to write the letters first before you start writing words and sentences and paragraphs and novels. Don't try to start writing a novel first and then try to fix your alphabet later on. You can't read your handwriting. You do a beautiful novel, but I can't read your handwriting, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea. So if you're saying, let's say basic stance, you get your basic stance right, you get your footwork right, you get your positioning right from when you're throwing your punches. You get all that right in the beginning, which is only a handful of principles. How you how you move your feet, what footwork you use, what fancy Ali shuffle and all these other, I know like the 10 long, one of my guys does a lot of 10 long stuff, like all this fancy footwork stuff. If you don't have that support, the basic principle at the very bottom mastered, I don't care what footwork you do, it's still going to have bad footwork, right? The steps are irrelevant. It's that underlying core principle. If you can figure that out, the rest is easy. And this applies, I know it's like we're talking about Jeet Kune Do, but it's when I mean principle, it's not an idea, right? It is a fundamental truth of the universe, right? It's physics, it's law of nature kind of thing. It's every MMA fighter uses the same principles to succeed, period. They go, oh, and I took that from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. No. That's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's expression of some underlying truth, right? You bend your arm this way, it breaks. You bend it that way, it's a key lock. That's a principle. It only goes 3 ways, right? So how you express that is irrelevant if you understand the gist, right? I understand that principle well enough that anytime I see somebody's arm bend, I go, oh, key lock. I go at it. And you would do upward bind or something like that is what I think your lineage, right? Or double wrist lock in catch wrestling. It's the same thing. If you understand that, you don't need to know a technique from anywhere. I can show you 50 of them. It's irrelevant. Right? I should show you 50 different versions of it one time, and you'll always be able to get a key lock from almost anywhere you're at. That's the principle base, because you understand how that thing works versus, right? How do you feel about it?
And is that the because I remember when we first talked about doing this, you mentioned the hierarchy of principles training, right? Is that what you're talking about here? Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about, right? And I found like if you get people to understand how a punch functions, right? It's mass times acceleration, it's velocity change of impact, so on and so forth. You're doing those things, and if I can get you to intrinsically understand that, I don't care what punch I have you throw, you'll be able to throw it with ridiculous amount of power, right?
Right.
Whereas I can teach you techniques on how to throw a punch, but you don't really understand why it works or not. You either kind of get it or you kind of don't get it, right?
Yeah.
And so you're always kind of behind, eventually you get to there. You get to that spot. You know what I mean? It's almost like, there is a drawback. The drawback is none of your techniques are very clean, but they all work anyways. That makes sense. They don't look pretty.
Right.
But they all work, because the only thing you care about is making this thing happen versus I got to make this pretty technique.
Well,
right?
so now that makes me think of three things, right?
Okay.
One, everybody's watching movies and they're seeing pretty technique. So in their mind, pretty techniques work because, in other parts of the internet, here's what they want to know. Will this style beat this style?
Right.
Or if this guy was at his prime, would he be able to beat that guy at his prime? Right?
Yeah.
So, which makes me think that people are not learning anything.
I agree.
Right?
Those are fun conversations, but they're just for fun.
Yeah.
Right? Who the hell knows if those guys fight and who would win? Nobody knows. But, it's more about it's fun to think about that stuff, because that is actually, there is some value to that kind of discourse, right? Because you're saying, well, why do you think Ali would beat up Mike Tyson? I don't know. You're going to explain why. And I'm going to say, well, I explained. Here's my counter argument. I'm like, well, what about that? And you're starting to understand more of their combat, basically, even like style to style. Oh, this style is better than that style. It's not about better. It's going, how would they match up? What would they try to do?
Yeah, I think I'm not versed enough in the psychology to understand why somebody would want to know, would actually take the time to type it into a computer. Would Bruce Lee be able to beat Mike Tyson in his prime? I don't understand what kind of mind asks a question like that. I mean, because there is no answer to that.
Well, but you can think about it, though. I mean, there would be there's no truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's only your opinion based on whatever data you can come up with. Well, Mike Tyson's a heavyweight, so right there, Bruce has already got a problem. Is it a street fight? Can he kick? Can he punch? What is it? Just boxing? Right? Is it bare knuckled? Is it empty? Who knows?
Right.
But those are now you can actually talk about these details, and sometimes it's just fun. Right? Sometimes it's entertainment purposes. I get it, but I agree. I don't normally think about who would win in this fight. I don't think that way either.
Yeah, no, I'll watch TV before I do that. You know what I just went back to? Did you ever see Timothy Oliphant in Justified?
I did not. No.
Yeah, it's a discontinued series, but it's an old series about U.S. Marshals in Kentucky. It's really, I'm surprised that you didn't, because you're a filmmaker, aren't you?
I've done I've done a short film, and I'm doing right now. I'm working on a stupid online puppet thing. It's dumb. I make these crazy puppets and stuff, So I'm enduring art, and I've 30 plus years in graphic design and stuff. So
right.
So I do a little bit of everything. I write screenplays and do stuff like that. And
okay, because is it Blue Bunny Pictures? Is that the link on your? Okay, but that link doesn't go anywhere, Tim.
It doesn't anymore, no, because it's like I haven't done any work on that under that title in so long. I'm like, why am I paying to keep this thing when I'm not using it?
Right.
My Facebook one's still there, but that's kind of like a catch-all for my stuff.
Okay.
I used to do a lot of freelance work, and now I don't do a lot of that because I teach at the Los Angeles Film School, so it's like I don't need to do as much freelance work. So,
right. Yeah. But are there any intentions, any goals, still in film work?
There's one that I do right now that I've been writing with my buddy. He does I do some of the voices, but I write most of them, and he does they're just basically socks in a drawer, and they're talking stupid stuff to each other.
When you said that, I thought I just found out that these guys have been around for at least 10 years, but I only just found out about them. But it's this puppet thing that's based in Trinidad.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you I'll send you
Yeah.
I'll send you a clip of one of them. But it's hilarious, and apparently they over the years they started doing live shows
Right.
with
That's
the puppet heads,
yeah.
right? You know, yeah, I'll send you that. Um, what about the other thing that we had talked about? And I guess when you were talking about double stick, you touched on this. Was that the bilateral transfer phenomenon?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's and there's a lot of studies on this, and it's not a huge difference. 10,
Hmm.
17%. I think one of them was 17%. And it's just that if you train the right side alone, like your dominant hand, you're going to get so good with it. But if you train the non-dominant hand, you're actually going to gain the dominant hand will gain a greater skill from you training the opposite hand.
Yeah.
Because of that, it doesn't work the other way, right? Your left hand will get better because it's being trained, but you train your right hand, your left hand is suddenly going to get better. That is not going to happen.
Right.
It's the non-dominant will help the dominant hand get better.
Okay, let me devil's advocate again, Tim, because Bruce Lee said, right, you gotta put your power side forward.
Okay.
Now
right.
it sounds to me, Tim, like
I'm gonna explain why. This is good. I've explained this to my students too.
Right.
So here's what happens. If you're leading with a dominant hand, right hand forward, okay. Part of it's the greatest benefit of that is not having your right hand, your dominant hand forward. It's about having an unmatched stance and staying to the outside. Lomachenko is a left-hander. Watch how he moves. He fights. He's got a fight coming up too. He fights like a JKD boxer should fight. He angles to the outside. He's always gaining that outside line.
Yeah.
So when my guys fought competitively, if somebody came in a right stance, they would switch left and always go to the outside because they weren't used to that, right? They weren't used to that. Sometimes we go right to right because we know that guy's not used to fighting a southpaw. So that would be a tactical disadvantage. So think of it as a tactical advantage. Self-defense wise, it's that unmatched stance that's relevant. Would you be in a right-hand lead against another right-hand lead? Probably not a great idea because you lose the tactical advantage, right? There's no positional superiority, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the principle-based thing, right? Principles are not equal, meaning that one is more important than the other, and they add on to each other. So right? So Jeet Kune Do principle number one for us is simple, direct, efficient, right? So every single thing you look at, watch, do, add, train, everything should be through that lens, right? That's the underlying truth of everything you try to accomplish, right? Mm-hmm. It defines what comes next in the principles, right? Because you're trying to make it as simple, as efficient, and direct as possible. Mm-hmm. Second one is positional superiority, right? If I have a better position, I'm almost guaranteed to win every single situation, right? That's the reason why you do a grappling tournament and, hey, you're on your back and somebody mounts you, it's 4 points, right? For a reason. He's got a dominant position that he has a higher chance of success from there. It doesn't mean you're going to lose on the bottom, but you know that your percentages, it's like gaming. People who do a lot of I played Dungeons and Dragons with a kid. I'm in it. I'm a nerd, right? But it's like having a +5 sword, right? Or you're gonna advantage to hit because you have a better position, tactical position, right? And then our third principle would be movement. Right? If I know where I want to be here to be tactically advantageous to me, but I can't move there efficiently, right? So now I have to make sure I can move. And then the last one is, the way that something fits, right? You got to think hit. So every time you move, you're trying to hit the person. You're not just evading or defend, attack. It should be instantly convert that to attack, right? The only reason why you didn't throw when he moved is because you weren't ready. Okay, now I'm throwing, right? Defend, then throw right back.
Yep.
Otherwise, that's to my mind, that's not tactically efficient, right? And if you go watch, a great fight to watch is Kung Lee versus Frank Shamrock, right? Because Kung Lee fights in a southpaw stance, but he's right-handed, right? And what happened was they would have an exchange, right? And whoever won the exchange was always on the outside. And it was always close. Whoever got that outside line, that exchange. And I don't think either one of them knew where they were supposed to go, or they weren't always able to get where they want, because sometimes Kung Lee would go to the inside and then he would lose that exchange. I go, why did you go inside? The outside's where the advantage was. But you can see it tactically what's happening, right? And that's one of those things where that's more important than just having a straight hand lead. It's having that tactical advantage, that outside line, and knowing what that is. You can set up a tactical advantage match stance. It's just more complicated, much harder, right? They're almost neutral. So it might be, I might have a 10% advantage from my angle than you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think we probably have about the same amount of reach. So that would negate all of our advantages, right? If I stood outside of you, I negate your reach, right? Because I'm the one who has the advantage. Yeah. So it's those kind of things I think is more critical than just having the strong lead forward. And I think too, I mean, obviously I know the strong lead, it's not just a strong lead that makes your weak hand stronger if it's in the rear, because now it's got, it can travel farther, it get a little more acceleration. It's a little easier to put your body mass on a rear punch than it is with a front punch. So there is that too, where both hands are nasty and knock people out, but that may be the best situation. Luckily for us, it is, because most people are right-handed. And if you're classically trained in anything from MMA, Muay Thai, boxing, whatever, left lead, right hand in the rear. I don't know anything. I'm going to grab you with my left hand, swing up my big right hand. So I'm always going to be in a left lead. So it kind of works out to our advantage regardless tactically.
Right.
But it's not just because it's the strong hand. It's because of the stance, right? That unmatched stance, which is really important.
Okay.
At least, right.
All right. Right. Let's go down memory lane. And are you a born Floridian?
I am not. I'm from Ohio.
Ah, okay.
Go Browns! Go Browns!
All right. So okay. So then, all right. So let's do the traditional thing. Tell us how you got into martial art, right? And then how you got to JKD.
Yeah. So this would have been 1980 something, 83, 4, 5, something like that. And 14.
That's the Karate Kid era.
Yeah, exactly. Right. All that stuff. Bruce Leroy and all those. Man, I love that. Shokasugi movies and everything, ninjas and JKD and Karate Kid. And they had a WUAB 43 out of Cleveland had this Bruce Lee week on TV. And it was one of Bruce Lee's movies, right? And of course, the last one was like, what the hell is that? That's not even Bruce Lee. It's like by then it was like over. By about day 3, I'm like, oh man, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And I'm mid Ohio. There's nothing there at all. My aunt had a brown type. Like I don't want to learn that. I want to do this stuff. So basically, just started with a book in my living room. I got the hardbound version of Bruce Lee's fighting method, right?
Yep.
The original press,
yep.
right?
Yep.
And then I watch a bunch of kung fu movies, and how do I do? And so I taught myself to do spinning wheel kicks and things like that in my living room because I didn't have a choice. So I want to do this. And then when I moved to Florida, then I started working with Eddie Pagan, and and the rest just progressed from there.
Right.
And that would have been 89 or so. I think I came.
Okay.
Something like that. 89.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
How did you end up in Florida from Ohio?
I had relatives living here, and I had actually I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of lymphatic cancer. And I went through chemotherapy once and it went away, and then it came back. So I had to go through a bone marrow transplant. And when I got out, I was just like, I just need, I was in the hospital for like 30 days and I don't remember half of it because I was on morphine and everything else. And I'm like, I just got to get a fresh start. So I moved to Florida with my aunt, and I just never went back. I never liked the cold anyway. Then I don't have to care now. It's even worse, So I like the heat. So, so it's...
Right. So for those who might not know, the late Eddie Pagan was Richard Bustillo's representative in Palm Beach, right? So you moved to Palm Beach first?
No,
you were in that area, or you were always in Orlando?
No. Right. When he moved to Orlando, I was at his first school when he moved to Orlando.
Right. That's true. Yeah, Eddie did move up to Orlando. I forgot that. Yeah. Okay. Right. So on your bio on the on your website, it says that you've trained in JKD and submission grappling and catch wrestling and all that stuff. Did you train here in Florida with Carl Goetsch at some point?
No, I was not, unfortunately, able to do that. Our guy is trained, John Potenza. He's actually instructor under Billy Robinson and he has under Eric Paulson.
Mm-hmm.
So he has two different, and he was one of the founders of Snake Pit. Catch wrestling. So that's what we're doing. It's old school catch wrestling. So basically only the stuff Billy Robinson taught him. And of course we learned that stuff, but we also learned some other stuff. And of course, a lot of our stuff comes directly from Gokor, which is not, I mean, there's obviously a lot of Kenshin influence. His stuff's who knows what it is. The highest end is who knows what that is, right? It's a little bit of everything. It's a judo and sambo and, and his own things kind of mixed together, whatever they develop to work. So that's our framework for what we do. And I don't do anything purist. I'm not a big believer in purist anything.
Right.
Because that stops evolution, right? It's like I'm not going to regurgitate. I can learn things from people, but doesn't mean that I want to use that entire piece, right? Just Bruce it. I don't know all of judo. What do you judo do? What do they do? What are they expressing? How do they do their throws? Okay, I'm going to take this. This fits what I'm doing. I take that. That fits what I'm doing. I'm going to use that stuff. I don't need all of judo. I just need some of the pieces that fit what I'm doing. And we kind of think that way. I'm going to add and replace. It's not really even add, it's replace. This is better than what I'm doing. I'm going to stop doing what I was doing and I'm going to do this new thing that's better.
Right. Yeah. So you're right. But that's the difficulty
it's not easy.
That some of the detractors will say. They'll say that you're adding styles to Jeet Kune Do. Yeah.
Well, as you know, most of the time that is the case. That happens a lot. The people who know what they're doing are doing the opposite of that.
Yes.
They're removing the things. I don't have a Muay Thai class.
Right.
I'm not certified specifically under Muay Thai because I don't need that ring sport component to teach the parts of it that function within what I already do.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, I know I throw Muay Thai elbow and knees and whatever, but I don't need to stand in that stance because that's not relevant for what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah, because that stand does not work. It works in their context.
Exactly.
But it doesn't work in the context of what we want.
And so there's a difference between Jeet Kune Do version of having components from other arts, and then I'm learning an art for the sake of learning the art, right? So if I want to learn Muay Thai because I want the art of Muay Thai, that's different. That's not part of Jeet Kune Do, right? That's Muay Thai. Hey, that's perfectly fine. We all have different goals, right? Yeah. Mine is I don't need that. I need to know the combative components of Muay Thai that fit what I'm doing. That's what I want to learn. That's what I'm going to add and replace and whatever. And that's for everything we do, right? Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in the catch wrestling stuff. We learn the old school stuff. Well, that's competition wrestling, things like that. I'm not going to, that doesn't help us if I'm going to train somebody fighting on the street, right? It might help us if we're doing a competition. So even my competitors are going, every technique they use is street first. And then, oh, by the way, you can use this in the cage. Or you can use this in a submission grappling, right? It's not the other way around.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's like,
how did you get into coaching fighters?
What was that?
How did you get into coaching fighters?
I don't know. I just had some people. I want to compete. It's like, okay, how do I do that? Let me figure this out, right?
Okay.
And then over the years, it's like, I mean, we've won a lot more than we've lost, and it's almost like people who don't fight or train people to fight competitively. It's hard. The easiest way to prove that your stuff works is to go fight competitively with it, and not change it. So that it fits what everybody else is doing. Fight what you're doing in the cage and see what happens. Right. You don't see it, right?
Yeah.
There's some truths. Now I notice a lot of guys use a lot of JKD principles in fighting, right? In MMA stuff. John Jones Jr. does it all the time. Anderson Silva was almost straight up, hey, this is how you fight JKD, right? Matt Hughes when he fought Hoist Gracie, right? Straight up how we would attack Hoist Gracie as a JKD guy. If you know anything, I don't know how deep your grappling is, or if this is how we would approach him, right? This is how we would attack it, and that's how you stop that jiu-jitsu guy from doing. That's why Matt Hughes, had such a good fight against him. Those principles are competitively. Competition is a little different too, because it's. People don't like to hear like, well, I'm a little guy. Well, good. You're not going to beat a big guy if he's trained. You guys are both trained together. The big guy's going to win almost always. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
right? I'm gonna poke him in the eye. It's like, good luck. You can barely hit the guy, let alone try to poke his eye out, his little tiny thing, and while he's coming at you like a freight train,
right.
You're probably just gonna end up on the ground and get your head caved in, right? It doesn't mean that little guy shouldn't train. And little guy, I'm 6'1", so I'm 297 pounds, a little fat and old, but it doesn't mean that guy shouldn't train, because he has no chance without any training, so he can start to even it out. That big guy's not trained, but there's a reason why there's weight class in everything.
Yeah.
Right. And if they're equally trained, the bigger, faster, meaner guy wins every single time. There's almost no way you can't, if they're equally skilled. Right. It's that phenomenal athlete thing. So competition is like that, but you have to have the right athlete. I can't just have anybody randomly show up and I can train them and I can fight and win. No, because same thing happens. Like, the other guy's been training too, and unfortunately he's faster and stronger than you, so he's probably gonna win.
Yeah.
Regardless of what I teach you, it's hard to stop. You know how it works, right?
When you were talking about the best way to prove, is to have the fight. I was reminded. Did you ever see The Way of the Warrior, the BBC documentary from the early '80s?
Yes. Yeah.
There's a section in there with Eskrima, and Kakoi Kenyete says, right, the only way to prove that your stuff works is to accept every challenge.
Right. Well, he was the enforcer for them, right? He's the one who our colleagues under is Kakoi.
Okay.
That was Richards, and he was because those parts kind of split off, and it's each one of all the nephews, a couple of the nephews did their own thing, right? And Kakoi was the last sibling still alive, but he was their enforcer, and he would just fight whoever. Like, my job was to beat the crap out of you. And that was a huge part of the training. Was like we were saying, it's principle based. Here's the basic things we want you to do. Now fight, and then go fight again, and fight again, and fight again, and you're going to figure out these things as we're doing the basics. It's not more and more complicated drills. It's more functional. Make this thing work, right? Yeah.
So why is that simple message that you just elucidated? Why is that simple message been lost in the martial art world, and specifically in the JKD world?
Well, I think it's not easy. It takes thought. It takes effort. It takes the will to not just regurgitate what you already know, to constantly try to progress and get better and better and better. And it's not easy to have you show up tomorrow, Dwight, and I got my list of things I'm going to teach. I show up and I go, I have no idea. I wait up, I figure out who's going to be there, and I go, you need this, this, and this, and let's do some drills that fix that.
Right.
That's hard as an instructor. Most people can't do that. Some of my instructors can't do that, are under me. They have to have a plan when they show up. They can't just randomly pull stuff out of their butt based on what they see and perceive that. It's a hard way to train people, right? There's a reason why they're not a bunch of great MMA coaches. There are a handful that are great, many that are good, but the great ones are the ones who are that. They're very able to take somebody's game and break it apart and fix the things they need to fix so they get better and better and better. That's not an easy thing, right? And it takes a lot of, some of it's intelligence, some of it's will. It's mostly will, right? The will to not just do the same things over and over. I just get bored if I do this. I would go insane if I were teaching the same drill every day I showed up. I would, oh my God, I'm not dying. I don't even like teaching the basic stuff half the time. Like, oh, geez, can I do some advanced stuff that's more?
So are you saying you never had an organized curriculum for your school?
I have an organized curriculum, but it's not really that organized. So in other words, I need you to know this. Like it's like 9 pages long. The test for our first test is like 9 pages long.
Okay.
Right. It's on my website. If anyone wants to go to the website, I think it's 8 pages long, and it needs an edit again. But basically, it's like you need to be able to do jab, cross, hook, uppercut, roundhouse, like some basic things. And then on the test, I'm going, here's a combo you've never seen before. Do it. And then by the third time you do it, you better be at speed and at power, because and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's not a series. It's not anything. It's these are the tools I need you to be able to use at will.
Yeah.
That's what I'm training them to do.
Yeah.
So I do have a framework for all that stuff. It's not random. It feels random at times. Oh my guys, no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
And it really, remember Bruce with the empty circle, right? Do you ever, go back to the Last Dragon, right? Bruce Lee, right? you remember, I'm sure you remember this, in the very beginning, when he's out on that wharf or whatever out there, or he's out there training in the very beginning opening montage, right? Mm-hmm. And he gets the patch ripped off of the yellow and red dragon, right? And he's like, and he shows the little screen with the yin yang dragons going around in different colors, right? Those are supposed to be in the colors of Bruce Lee's original idea, but the first one is an empty circle,
right?
It was like, like the punch is a punch, a kick is a kick in the beginning, and then you start learning, it's this kind of punch and this kind of kick and whatever, and get to the beginning, at the end, it's just an empty circle again, right? Mm-hmm. And what should happen is, it should feel like if you know what you're doing, it doesn't feel like you know what you're doing. It just happens because you don't have anything pre-ordered in your brain saying it's consciously, I'm going to do this, this, or this. No, something happens and you just do it. Right.
Yeah.
Training somebody to respond that way is really, really hard.
Yeah.
Right.
You know that I applied that principle even in enrolling people at my school. Right. I used to tell people, look, the first thing that you want to do is to come meet and sit and talk with me. Right. Because I don't know what you're going to ask me. So if you come and I can make sense of what it is that I have to offer you without knowing what you're going to ask me, then maybe I'll convince you that this is the place for you to join.
Right.
Right. Now, the truth of that is that I've been around long enough that it's highly unlikely that somebody's going to come up with a question or come from a perspective that I have not yet encountered.
Right.
You see, but it was never a fixed pattern for the meeting. Just like when I sit here and talk so I made no notes for you other than I made 2 notes for you. Right? Bilateral transfer phenomenon and hierarchy of principles training. Yeah. And how long ago did we
yeah, whatever. And it was like one little quick sentence, like, okay, here's the 2 things I covered.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it. The rest of it is based on what we talk about.
Right. And that's what it is. And when you're doing that, you have an honest interaction with the person that shows up. Right?
Yeah.
They're not a student. They're a human being, right? Somebody who's honestly, even if you don't have the right answer, I don't know how the answer to that. Mm-hmm. People will respect that, honor that, and go, wow, okay. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of stuff like, how do you defend that, Sifu? Because I have some nasty stuff that you can't get out of. And I'm like, how do you defend that? Like, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Let's see if we can figure out.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes we can figure something out, and sometimes it's instantaneous. Like, oh, that's what you do. I've never done it before, but that's how you do it.
Yeah. What you've been around long enough to have been part of the generation where people would say, well, what is Jeet Kune Do? And we would say, well, it's kind of easier for me to tell you what it's not. Right. But I have discovered that that does not work as well anymore.
You're right.
In the old days, where people were perhaps a little bit more trusting, and it's like, well, okay, I know that this guy he's put in his time and he's done the work, so I'm going to trust him. I think we live in a different world now.
Yeah.
So if there is a prospective person coming to you and asking you about your school and what they can expect to learn joining there, what are the kind of things that you tell them?
I have Jeet Kune Do is MMA for the street.
Oh, okay.
That's an easy way to explain it, right? Mm-hmm. It's saying all the stuff you're not allowed to do in MMA, we do. We train like you're going to fight in MMA, and we get in a cage. Only everything we do is illegal, right? That's pretty much it. If you can't fight a basic amateur MMA guy and win, you got no business even thinking you know how to defend yourself, right? Because that's just a regular amateur guy, knows some wrestling and some striking, pretty much, maybe a little bit of jiu-jitsu kind of stuff. If you can't defend that, what are you practicing? Because that's 90% of what you're going to face these days.
Yeah. Yeah. And which I think is an interesting aspect of the continuous evolution of JKD, because Bruce Lee said that JKD had to evolve to fit with the times. and
but here's the thing. It's not just the evolution. It's not just evolution of it's not that it needs to change the face a new requirement. In other words, some of it is going, hey, these guys are going to double leg all the time, so we probably should spend some more time dealing with the double leg, right? Or jiu-jitsu is going to do an arm bar or kimura or a guillotine. So you better learn how to defend that stuff a little more than you would somebody doing a foot sweep, which nobody does in a fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at one time that was normal, right? That happened all the time.
Yeah.
That's part of it. That would be some of the evolution, but it shouldn't change the underlying principle. It can't, right? It's just a re-expression of it, right? It's still Jeet Kune Do. It's not suddenly, it doesn't fit those framework of things, right? I always have this thing like, because as you know, you've had plenty of guys on here talking about that, what is Jeet Kune Do, what's not Jeet Kune Do, everybody's got their own, viewpoint of whatever it is.
Yeah.
And go, well, Bruce would want this, or Bruce would want that, or he didn't call it this, or he didn't call it that. And I go, and I look at it this way. So some of this way. So if you got somebody who learned some judo, they maybe did a couple of eskrima, for a couple of years, maybe they did some boxing, and they call that Jeet Kune Do. They have no Jeet Kune Do training. There's no lineage involved, nothing at all. They're using no traditional version of Jeet Kune Do techniques at all. Is that Jeet Kune Do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. Is it or is it not? Right? And mine is going, there's no way in hell that's Jeet Kune Do because it doesn't fit any of the principles, even the way of the intercepting fist, right? That's a simple, most direct, and the most efficient way of putting somebody down, right? Other than straight up hitting them without them moving. And really, you're intercepting their intent. Oh, I think they're going to take a swing. Bam, you hit them. Okay, well, that's the whole premise. So if your whole training isn't geared toward that thing, right? He could have Jeet Kune Do. It could be the essence of Jeet Kune Do, if that was his underlying, we call it root principle, right? The main thing that's driving it is that I'm just going to attack you as soon as you move. Okay, then it's probably Jeet Kune Do. All right, I could say that's a Jeet Kune Do. It's just not whatever the hell you want put together. Yeah, in my mind. I mean, I don't think that.
Where do you think people got that idea from? Do you think that was because of the blend of stuff that was being shown on seminars?
Yeah, I agree. It's the whole idea of having all these different things, added to the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, and this is art, and I attracted this art, and this. Oh, put them all together, and it's going to be Jeet Kune Do. Well, is it really Jeet Kune Do? And and you have the opposite too, though. You're saying, here's a nucleus guy. Hang on one second. There we go. My dog was being a little barky there.
Okay.
All right. Train of thought.
Right. We were talking about seminars and the blend and people, having this idea.
And part of it was there was a good part and the bad part of that. So the good part of saying we're exposed to lots of different things, right? We got a lot of different tools we can pull out that fit what our core is. Because I've had, you and I both have had, so many seminars, it's ridiculous, right? Over and over, and a bunch of different instructors.
Yeah.
Seeing things from a different viewpoint. You can a little bit of this from this guy, a little bit from that guy. The problem is when we say, I'm going to regurgitate exactly what this person did, and this person, and this person, and that person, the entire thing.
Yeah.
Because Muay Thai stance does not match Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
Right? Or boxing. Or, the stance is all wrong. And if you're going, well, I'm going to do boxing left lead because I'm right-handed. Well, how does that match our right-hand lead, right? It doesn't. So why are you training boxing? Unless you're going to do it in right-hand lead and throw a vertical jab instead of a horizontal jab because that's a boxing jab. Do we need the boxing jab, right? I don't know. Do we really need it? That's what I'm saying. So it's like, do I need 800 ways to throw a lead hand? Probably not. I need a couple that work. I need one from this angle. I need from that angle, one from that angle, one from that angle, maybe one from that angle. I don't need anything else, right? And that's just throwing into that hole, right?
Yeah.
It's not about the tool.
Yeah.
That's tough, Some of our stuff, some of it is just that cultural stuff. Now, you do get a lot of great stuff, but only if you're willing to take it apart and put back together on your own. I was always a big fan of or not a big fan, I should say, of teaching a bunch of stuff I didn't think worked because I was taught it.
Yeah.
Why am I teaching my students this stuff? It doesn't work. It's art. If you want to learn that, I don't teach. When I first started teaching regular when I went to school in '98, I taught the Wing Chun first form. Right? We worked on Chi Sao, and you had to. That was the first test. You had to take that to pass the first test. I haven't taught that in 20 years because not that there's not some usefulness out of that. This goes back to the simple, direct, efficient. It's not very efficient. It takes a long time to get somebody to be able to even roll hands to get a little bit of benefit, right? I'd rather than box for that whole time period.
Right.
It would be much better combatively just doing that.
Yeah.
So I've kind of switched it and going, instead of saying all the stuff that was really valuable combatively is all the stuff you can get in the beginning. And then all the other stuff at the end is all the art stuff that you can do because it's fun and interesting. My guys we have Viking and shield, sword and shield stuff on Wednesday nights, and lightsaber and combative lightsaber, right? Because it's fun. I mean, there are real combative principles involved with what they're doing. And they're beating the crap out of each other. I mean, it's not like they're just, but what's the use of that on the street? Zero, right? Point is they already know how to fight on the street, right? Or competitively fight. Yeah. So this is just for fun.
So they can relax and have fun.
Right. It's the art now. They're practicing art. It's martial art. So we start with martial science and work our way to martial art.
I like that. Hey, what other because and maybe this was when we got kicked off of Facebook. You had talked about that you use a proprietary platform, right, for your online stuff. What kind of proprietary language has evolved in the years that you've been teaching, like since '98 and what have you, like Tim Motter phrases,
this thing
for break it, for explaining stuff.
Ooh. I don't know if I have any like catchphrases. I have any catchphrases. I'm sure I have plenty.
I see right. No, as soon as I ask you, I go, you know what? He probably has a ton, but to put him on the spot to try to remember them. But if I was at your school watching you teach a class, I'd probably leave with like 10 of them.
Right. One of them I know with grappling, we just did this yesterday, is to show them some love, right? So when you put a bone blade on somebody's jawline or something like that, we call that show them the love, right? Give them a little bone, like, oh, so that's one of the things. Show them some love, like, we don't. I do that. That's one of the ones that my common ones. I do a lot of stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
The reason why I bring that up is because one day I was reading about frameworks and proprietary language and what have you, and it dawned on me JKD is replete with proprietary language. Before Bruce Lee, who talked about 5 ways of attack?
Right.
Who talked? Who talked? And then what Inosanto and Bustillo did with the Kali gave us even more proprietary language, right? The combat distances and all that stuff. And that's why sometimes it really distresses me that that people don't celebrate JKD as much as they used to and as much as they could. So I wanted to kind of close with this and ask you if there's anything about the old days that you miss, that you wish we still had.
The old days. My hair. I don't know. I mean, it's looking backward, it doesn't usually help a lot, but I remember, think about how big your classes used to be versus MMA. You got half the people that would be athletic or going to MMA gym now, right? So some of that, and it's not a bad thing. It's just it's a loss of Jeet Kune Do because we were the ones before that was even an art. Right. I remember watching the first UFC with all my guys from class going, oh, this is the best thing ever, man. This is what we do every day. And we're, how do I do this, do that? And like, you guys suck. We should do this. And we all do that. We're like, hey, if I'd have done that, I'd have done this, that kind of thing. And now it's like there's an MMA place on every corner. And in Florida especially is a hot, Florida, California, Las Vegas, things like that. There's some places that are just, there's the talent pool alone, right, is amazing. And then it's just, there's so many schools. I mean, even Central Florida has it's probably 20 MMA places in Central Florida, and just in Orlando area.
Yeah.
And one JKD school, mine.
Right.
Yeah. And my buddy, one of my students who does stuff at my school.
Which is, I mean, it's fascinating, right? It's almost like nobody knew how to market JKD.
And part of it is because if it's done correctly, it's hard to market. I went to a Blintawalk seminar a couple of years ago, and it's it's really hard to do. Blintawalk and Dosapara started as the same parent art at one time, right?
Right. Yeah.
It has this whole idea where it's when they're attacking, it's on target, it's at speed, and it's random. So you never know which way it's coming from. That's the general framework that they try to push everything through, more realistic. That's really, really hard to do with 40 people in the class, because somebody's got to feed it. Somebody has to, both people have to do it right. It's like having two people who try to chisao and neither one of them know what the hell they're doing. You can't do it. You have to have somebody has to know what they're doing to even start.
Right.
So there's a lot of that. Jeet Kune Do is a really complicated thing, and it's hard to teach correctly. The watered down stuff that's going through the motions, people don't like that, so they go somewhere else. Right? See what I mean? So it's kind of like that kind of thing. Or it turns into like title boxing. Well, then there's title boxing and, all those places that are just simply cardio. So you got the people who came to JKD for cardio, right? Because it's fun. Well, now they're going to title boxing. They're going to LA boxing. They're going to those places instead now. So it just got watered down by other markets. So they got something. Let's go take some of those guys. And a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And next thing you know, you don't have very many people anymore. At least that's been my experience. I get both people in my class specifically wanted Jeet Kune Do, sought me out specifically because that's what they want. Drive 45 minutes to class 4 days a week because they want only that.
Hey man, that might be a Florida phenomenon because that's what I have always gotten. Yeah. I never got anybody calling me asking me about MMA. Right. And it might be because, my website went up I think the first website went up in 95. So, So Google recognizes unifiedmartialart.com, right, for a number of years now. So that probably helps. But yeah, Tim, let me, so how do people get in touch with you? That's one thing. And then the other thing I want you to do is to tell me who you think I should try to get on the show that I haven't gotten before.
Okay. All right. So I will say that you can reach me at jeetkundoinstitute.com. That's our website, right? And the email goes to me, so I'll answer it. Hey, woohoo, right? Phone number is on there if you want to call, whatever. And if you're, especially if you're a JKD guy wandering around, you come in Orlando, we always love to have people come in and stuff like that. And
nice.
I'm going to say hi, work out, whatever. Who to bring in that you may or may not have? I admit I have not seen all 183. I think you said, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, man, we crank them out.
You don't remember all of them either, I'm sure at this point, right?
I have the files though.
Hey, Dwight, what happened in episode number 75?
Right. No, if I've had the person on, I can probably remember. I won't remember what episode number. I'm not that big of a nerd. But if they've been on, I can pretty much remember them. And like I was saying,
Mo Teague.
Okay.
Mo Teague. He's a instructor from the UK, or Mo Teague. I think I don't even know him personally. I want it just because I want to watch.
Okay.
Because I've heard that he's crazy.
Yeah.
He's under Richard Bastillo. And
okay.
Quick kind of guy, and so and you're allowed to profane on here, right? Because he's probably dropping F-bombs left and right. So You might have a lot of beeping to do before you repost or something. I don't know how that works. So,
that's fine. Okay. No, YouTube knows that my show is not designed for kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, but he just would be an interesting person. I know some people who know him personally and say that, any chance you get, that would be great.
Yeah, I've heard the name, but to be honest, I don't know who he is. So I will definitely reach out and see. Okay. All right. Anybody else that comes to mind?
No.
That's okay. That's okay.
Right. I mean, you have a lot of people on here. And almost like would be interesting to be pulling in people who had made a huge contribution to Jeet Kune Do who don't do Jeet Kune Do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Jeet Lebel, which I don't know if he's even able to do anything these days, right? I don't even know. He might have passed away. I'm not sure. Horrible that I don't know that.
Yeah.
Or like Gokor, because he's a huge part of the whole IMB. For those who don't know IMB, so Dwight was saying in the original days, originally it was Inosanto, Martinez, and Bastillo, right? And Martinez was the business guy, right? And then when Dan moved to Del Rey, Richard just kept the name and called it International Martial Arts and Boxing, so IMB. But Gokor is a huge part of that grappling portion of that curriculum, and always has been. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't do Jeet Kune Do, right? And he trains professional fighter Ronda Rousey and things like that. So it's like he would be a great. Just like how did grappling fit in there and even his own evolution? I'm not sure that's your JKD thing, but I'm saying that might be interesting having people, how do they influence Jeet Kune Do, the development of it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And like when we started versus now. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I call it the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, but it doesn't mean that everybody who comes on has to be some kind of recognized JKD person or what have you. No, not at all. Not at all. If there's a JKD connection, then it's something that I'm willing to explore for sure. For sure. Right. Yeah.
And they're Gokor is definitely a character. So yeah. Well, he's one of those guys it's like we said, he's 50, I think he's 56 or 57 now. Mm-hmm. And he just started competing again in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. He doesn't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he wins. I mean, he wins. So he has undefeated still. So it's like, because he's like, I think my stuff's good. I'm going to go compete against the guys who do this other stuff. And if my stuff's good, I'll win. If not, then I will lose. Mm-hmm. And that's some of what has, I think that's some of what's happened with a weekend Jeet Kune Do over the years is that we are no longer competitively proving that we can do this stuff. Right. And now everyone wants to go MMA, right? Because it's like, oh, they're proving them stuff every day. They're going to go and fight. That's one of the reasons why I do train guys to fight is because it's like, if my stuff can't work under those circumstances, it probably can't work.
Right. But like you were saying before, with Matt Hughes and Anderson Silva, and Jones, and what have you. So there is a JKD presence, a JKD connection in MMA. So how do we make that a more forceful awareness of that?
I don't know. We need to do it. You need to do like, here's an MMA fight broken down by JKD's guy and say, these are the principles of Jeet Kune Do that they're using. That would be the way to do it. So people understand that it's not right. So like,
well, you're more qualified to do that than I am. You want to set that up
on a regular basis? You mean?
No. You pick one or two fights.
I can do that. Yeah, sure.
Right.
And I can
That's
point it out.
Idea.
Even if you just watched it, because you know enough, it'll be interesting because you can watch a fight and go, what do you see? Why did this win? Because of that. What principle did they just express? Oh, he did outside. He went outside. Outside line. Okay, he did it. Yeah. He did this stuff, right? Look, he did a step slide to get there or whatever.
Right. That might be fun, Tim.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We should see if we could do that.
That'll be our next one.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I want to finish with this because if you haven't seen this, I'll send it to you because you're a filmmaker. There's a British guy named Rob Ager who did fight scene breakdown of the dojo fight from Fist of Fury. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't seen the breakdown. No.
Oh,
but man. I would like to see that. Yeah, send it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. Now, what's the other thing? Okay, so I got to send you the Trinidadian hand puppet stuff, and Rob Ager's. Let me make a note of this. The Letco TV and Rob Ager. for Tim Motter. Hey, man, this was definitely worth the wait.
I agree. And I'll be back when you have me back. I'll be ready.
Oh, yeah. I
like to talk. We talk.
Right. Okay. But I'm going to tell you something, right? I know almost immediately how much I'm going to enjoy talking to somebody just from a couple of things that they might say. It might even not necessarily saying it to me, right? And so, but I knew that when we finally got this opportunity, I was going to have a really good time. So I really appreciate your carving out some time for me on your Friday evening, and we'll do it again for sure, sir.
Right. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
All right.
And, let's do it again.
Okay. Yeah, we will. All right. You take care. Have a good weekend.
All right. You too.
All right.
All right.
Take care. All right. So that was episode 183 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues. Sorry, earlier today I didn't do the broadcast. Just had some logistical problems, so we'll resume next Wednesday. Next Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, episode 184 of the Dialogues will be part 2 with Salem Asli, who is recovering quite handsomely from his recent injury. So that will be next Friday. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. Feel free to share, like, comment, ask questions about this. I'll have Tim go through the comments if necessary. And if you were catching the simulcast on the YouTube, please be sure to like, share, and click the the notification bell over there on the YouTube, right? And so that's it for another Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode. So I will see you guys next time. Until then, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. Have a great weekend. Talk soon. Take care.